Not me.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order so we can leave plenty of time for our chairman, Rob, because he's awesome if you haven't heard him speak. So we're so glad to welcome you this new year. Thank you for being here. I think we have some new faces and guests, so if you have someone at your table that you want to introduce, raise your hand. Let's see. Anyone brave? Okay. Yeah, please tell us your name. Stephanie, welcome. Jager, okay, good to have you. Thank you. Yes. Any other new or guests that want to introduce themselves? Put you on the spot. Okay. Yes, I know that. Yeah. And we'll excuse our elected officials today. There's some legislative meetings and an economic summit. Some of them may pop in, but unfortunately, we were competing with the date today. So. But we're so glad all of you could make it. A couple announcements we have coming up. I'm going to have Judy come talk about Lincoln Day, but there's also a House Majority meeting down here at Utah Tech University on the 16th. If you want to go hear from some of our Sunshine Caucus, talking about some things coming up for the legislative session, that would be a good thing. So that's on the 16th at 6 p.m., I believe. And then there will be a victory party on the 20th, right, Lisa? Yes. What time is that at? We don't know. Okay, to be determined for the time, but if you'd like to go celebrate the inauguration of President Trump and our other elected officials, then that will be on the 20th. Where is that? Location, did you say? Is that also? Okay. We're smoothing out some of the details. But the county party will let us know, so we'll pass that around. But it is going to be on the 20th. And we also have United We Pledge is having their fundraising gala, so I just wanted to mention that to you guys since they are our community partner this year. That's on February 27th. They do a silent auction and a dinner. So we can forward that around as well, but keep that on your calendar for February. Let's see, yes.
Are we going to get a table for that?
We haven't talked about that, but we can. We are donating our brick and all the donations that you guys bring in over this year. We'll get to United We Pledge. So yeah, but if any of you individually also want to go, they sell individual tickets. So. And let's have Judy, can you come up? She's going to talk about Lincoln Day. We have Republican women tables, so if you want to sit with us, you get a great seat, going to be with all of the great company. So I'm going to let Judy talk about who that is.
Thank you for this opportunity. We're having Lincoln Day a little bit different. It's going to be a breakfast on February 8th. So it's very early. It starts at 8 o'clock. So be there at 7:30, but I know you all can do it because you're loyal Republicans and you will support us. But anyway, we're having a guest speaker and her name is Marianette Miller Meeks. All those 3 M's. So some people in here maybe have heard her. Anybody? Lisa? Okay. So she is a fireball and she is from Iowa. And she has a military background, which I love because my husband was in the Marine Corps 30 years. So, but her father was in the Air Force and then she joined the Army. And now she is a congresswoman in Iowa. And she is just, if you go in and look at her record, very conservative. She has really made something of herself, kind of like our vice president coming up. She started out poor, joined the Army at 18. She's had many siblings in her family, but she's really made something of herself, and she'd be a great example. She'll be inspiring. I want you to trust me on this. Last year we did Buck Sexton, and people were like, what? But he was fabulous. And I hope on the way over, you are listening to Clay and Buck on 890 in the morning from 10 to 1. And that was our guest then. And, he was amazing. So trust me with this woman, you're going to really be fired up and excited to hear from her. So your tickets are 50?
45 for our tables.
45, that's a deal. So, and we're having a buffet breakfast. It'll be really delicious. So February 8th, Saturday, please join us.
Thank you, Judy. Yes, that is a fundraiser for the county party, helps us get our funds built up for caucus. So we'd love to have you. If you want to get a seat at the Republican Room of tables, just talk to us after. Sandy or myself can get you on the list and get you squared away. So, all right, great. Just remember, if you're new, we've got the note cards. If you want to write a question for Rob, I think he'll be willing to take some questions at the end. So write those questions. We'll gather them. Also, write your volunteer hours every month. That could be political service or non-political. There's different categories. We'll keep track of that all year. We get it to National Republican Women, and we also do we keep track for our club for a fun reward at the end of the year too. So let's see. I think that's all the announcements we threw at you. Just renew your membership if you haven't. But we're going to go ahead and start with our prayer by our chaplain Sharon, and then we'll have Americanism by Charlotte. Following Charlotte, we'll turn the time over to Jennifer for our membership report, and then we will turn the time to Alexis to introduce our speaker. Hold on that point.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, we're thankful to Thee to be reunited in this new year and for today's meal that nourishes our body and mind. We're grateful to Thee for last month's informative and enjoyable meeting with guest speaker Tim Anderson and the entertainment of the Bar None Wranglers. We're thankful to Thee to welcome back guest speaker Rob Axson, and we're happy he's here to speak with us. We're thankful to Thee for a new year filled with possibilities and change for our country through the Trump administration and for those He has chosen for His cabinet and numerous other positions. And we're grateful to Thee for the Republican majority Congress. Father, we ask Thy blessing for Rob Axson. May he continue to lead, strengthen, and grow our party. We ask Thy blessing for the new administration and Congress. May they be united to fulfill the mandate given them, and may they confirm all nominees. We ask Thy blessing for the families of the victims in New Orleans, and Thy blessing for the firefighters and other first responders, and the residents who live in the areas of uncontrolled fires in California. May they all feel the sympathy and condolences of our nation. And for President Carter's family, who are grieving the passing of their loved one, may they be comforted by their memories of him. We ask Thy blessing for former guest speaker Dennis Prager, who remains hospitalized for a serious neck injury from a fall. May he have a full recovery. Lastly, Father, we ask Thy blessing for Joanne Britton. May she be successful as our state school board member. May it be the beginning of a gratifying experience as she begins her term with their first board meeting today. And may she be safe in her travels to and from Salt Lake City. Father, we humbly ask these blessings in the name of Thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Today I'm going to tell you about an interesting woman, Grace Hopper. And she was born in 1906 in New York City. And she went on to high school in Plainfield, New Jersey. And then she enrolled in Vassar College and graduated with a degree in mathematics. Then went on to Yale, where she graduated earning a master's degree in math and a PhD also. And then she married Vincent Hopper, and the couple had no children, but unfortunately they divorced in about 1945. After completing her PhD, Grace joined the faculty of her alma mater, Vassar College, where she eagerly transformed the study of math at Vassar. She threw away old textbooks and demanded strong writing from her math students and updated the curriculum to include the latest research in the field of physics. When the United States entered World War II, Grace received permission from Vassar. She was in a high-need job there, and they didn't really want to let her go, but she said to heck with that, and she wanted to join the Navy, so she joined the WAVES, which stood for Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. And then the military life totally changed her life. She was 37 years old when she went in, when she enlisted. And so she was very much older than many of the recruits, but she didn't care. The constraints of military life were liberating to her. She no longer had to make minor daily decisions like what to wear. I can identify with that. And she described the experience as the most complete freedom I had ever felt. In 1944, the Navy sent Lieutenant Junior grade Grace Hopper to Harvard University to work on the automatic sequence controlled calculator. The calculator was designed and built by IBM and nicknamed Mark I. Grace had called it an incredible beast. It was 8 feet high, 51 feet long, 3 feet deep, and weighed almost 10,000 pounds. The term computer programmer wasn't yet in use, but that was the task that she tackled with 2 other colleagues. They did complex calculations related to the war effort, including the design of the atomic bomb. She was the only woman on the team. Grace had a remarkable ability to explain complex ideas either to a highly technical audience or to ordinary people. She was very blunt, she was self-confident, and she was also very witty, traits that allowed her to succeed in the male-dominated field of computer science, traits that the men around her sometimes disliked her presence, including her own supervisor, the MARC project. Grace won over doubters with her intelligence. Grace had a talent for programming, which she saw as a set of steps made by the sequence of numbers, and quickly developed a deep understanding of the MARC computers. During the repair of MARC II, she found a moth inside the machine. She taped into the logbook and wrote, "First actual case of a bug being found." Bug already meant a problem in other fields, but thanks to Grace, the term became part of everyday computer talk. After the war, Grace turned down Vassar's offer to return to teaching. She enjoyed computer programming too much and accepted a full-time job at Eckert Mashley Computer Corporation. As a senior programmer, she wrote a program called Skeptical Colleagues. She called a computer, which stored certain commands in the machine, made operations faster. Grace's compiler paved the way for a long computer programming language that allowed human operations to tell computers what to do with few commands. Companies around the world use her research to develop computer languages that people with non-computer backgrounds could use to complete complex math, science, and engineering calculations. In the late 1950s, Grace worked with a group of programmers to develop a language that could be used with different kinds of businesses and on a variety of computers. And that was introduced in 1959. COBOL, Common Business Oriented Language. became the most widely used computer coded language of the time. So I think that was before any of us went into computers. After the war, Grace remained involved in the Navy as a reservist. She was a lieutenant commander in 1946 and rose to commander in 1952. In 1966, Grace reluctantly retired because of her age. Less than 1 year later, the Navy asked 60-year-old Grace to return to active service to work on improving their computer programs. For the next 16 years, Grace worked with the Navy to create more standardized computer languages for a wide range of duties. Those who reported to her often described her as Amazing Grace. Grace believed the structure of the Navy protected her from the sexism she might have encountered in civilian life. She continued to serve until retiring a second time at the age of 80 as a Rear Admiral. She was the oldest serving officer in the Navy at the time. Throughout her career, Grace spoke publicly about the importance of computer science and encouraged young people to consider studying computers. She also enjoyed explaining how computers and coding work, often carrying examples with her to lead basic demonstrations. Grace M. Hopper died in Arlington, Virginia in 1992 and was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Always amazes me about the things that women accomplished so many years ago and continue to do so.
Just before I do this, I'll do this one. So, I remember the compilers. I programmed RPG language at a hospital in Ohio. We had been manual and went into computerization, and that was in the late 60s. So, yeah, I remember compilers. You never wanted to drop them. Can we please stand and pledge allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm still learning this membership stuff, so. Haley, you gonna help me? Okay. All right. So first of all, let me give you the actual official numbers. Oh, wait a minute, I do that in order. Some kind of order. Okay, we have 36 members now, 5 new, we have 6 associates, and we have 26 GEM members. Now, GEM members are important. So there's 3 levels. So there's $50 that you pay, and the GEM members donations allow us not to have to do fundraising every month. When I was in California, every month we would have a raffle, people would bring in stuff, and that's how we raised our funds. But this club has so much better idea with the GEM, and we actually have a much better bank account than we ever had in California. So, of course, that is California, what can I say? So anyway, so you have silver, which is 50, gold, which is 100, and you are given a lunch, one free lunch for that. Or the diamond is 500, and you get free lunches. So there's some benefits to being a GEM member. So if you're not a GEM member, we would like for you to come on board with the rest of us. So anyway, we have 26 GEM members. So let's start by, first of all, let's go with, we've got some new members here, and I have their tags. Sandy Harsh, where is she? Did she not make it? Oh, I thought she made it. Okay. All right, next time. Linda Hausman. Is Linda here? Linda, did you get your badge?
I did.
You did, okay, then that's a duplicate, sorry. Okay, Stephanie, there you go. Oh, there they are, sorry. Stephanie, would you like to stand? And then is Myrna Stout here? Okay, I thought they were signed up for lunch. All right, so Stephanie's one of our new members. So these are, okay, we can do that. And she just needs to, Julia, we just need to give you your badge. Where is she? Julia's not here? Julia Bates? Yeah.
I have a badge.
Oh, you've already got a badge? Okay. Well, I'm trying to sort out the duplicates too. Okay, let's start with our gym members then. So first of all, we'll do silver. Let me just call your name out and then you stand and we'll just bring you your little tag to put on your badge. So there's Julia Bates, Jan Kaplan, she's not here. Carol Hansen, she here? No? Pat Perrin, Brian, sorry, Pat. And then Brooke Sullivan and Celeste Tolman. These are our silvers. Next is gold, which is Haley Kaplan. We'll grab her. Alexis. Eds, you want to stand? We'll get to you. Lestara Richens and Linda Ondershot. You can do those. And then I'll do the diamond. So, oh, wait a minute, I've got one here, I'll do this. So we have a silver associate, which is Justin Kaplan. Stand up, Justin. Just because you've got 2 meals there. And then we have 2 diamonds, and Suzanne is not here, and I'm the other one, so. So, I mean, we've got 36 members that have signed up, so we're going to be starting a phone bank, calling people to try to get them to renew. If anybody's got any good ideas on how to get new membership, because this is an off year and we tend to not be quite so active, but we're active. So if anybody would have any ideas at all as to how to get membership, just let me know. And I will take it under consideration. Thank you. I'll get my stuff off of here. Just throw them in here. Yes, Celeste, you're on the list for next month. You came in too late. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm excited to introduce to you our Utah GOP Chair Rob Axson, and I have some great introduction material from his mom and his wife. He must really trust me to give me both phone numbers. I'll start with his mom because I thought this was really, really cute. She had texted me a few things, and then all of a sudden, a little while later, she added something on the end, and I'm like, oh, I'm starting with that. So she says this was before computers. She had to buy the whole set of encyclopedias to answer all of his 3-year-old questions. I thought that is really, really, really sweet. So we're going to start there. That will tell you what he was like as a 3-year-old. She says Rob is a thrill seeker. He has never been held back by daring hikes, rough roads, high waves, speaking in crowds, or holding the tiniest of babies. He is excited about challenges. He takes the time in advance to go through all the scenarios so as to achieve the best chance for success. He is always watching out for the ones he is with so that they can reach the goal as well. He was born this way. And because cooking was definitely not her forte, he became a great cook. and knows the best restaurants everywhere he's been. And then, like I said, I was getting several texts, and I want to end with this one because I think this is perfect. She said, "Rob is one of the kindest people I've ever met," and I thought that's absolutely true. Anyone who knows Rob would absolutely say that. So, very, very sweet. So let me switch real fast. Give me just a second. Switch to his wife, Erin. And she gave me some information that I did not know, so this is great. She says he is an accomplished Shakespearean actor and was offered several full-ride scholarships to pursue that passion. That is incredible. I did not know that. English professor in me really appreciates that. She says he's mortally afraid of having his clavicle broken, and he was a mess when his one and only girl broke it as a 2-year-old. He always has an exciting chapter book that he's reading out loud to the family. He has never watched any season of any comedy on TV. Friends, Seinfeld, Parks and Rec, forget about it. He would much rather watch zombie apocalypse flicks, and this gets better, in other languages. And in my mind, I was really trying to imagine that, but I think it's probably something you have to see to believe or understand. The other language part really threw me. All of the funny info aside, he is the most principled, passionate person I know, and he hates to be highlighted for the things that he does. Countless times of him coming home from work late because he had to drive this person or that person that was stranded on the side of the road for a new tire and a warm meal. And this is the very best thing, and I'm just going to leave this. She says, "I have the biggest crush on him," and I'm like, "Oh, that's so cute." I totally read this and showed my husband. I'm like, "Oh, that's adorable." So please offer a very warm welcome to Utah GOP Chair Rob Axson.
Well, that's going to choke me up, honestly. That puts me at a severe disadvantage. I'm not normally intimidated to speak before crowds, but I also don't normally hear from my wife and my mom right before I get up to speak. So thank you. I do like to watch Korean movies to try to keep up my Korean from my mission experience in Korea. So those are the zombie. There was one show that I watched. There was one zombie apocalypse show that was in Korean that I watched. It was pretty good. Actually, two. There was two. No, there was three. 2 movies, 1 TV series. So yes, I guess I'm guilty as charged. But a couple of things that I just want to jump into. First off, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. It's a pleasure to see friends new and old. Very much appreciate a couple of groups and clubs and efforts that happen across this state. Utah County has a great women's Republican club. Washington County, I'd say the Utah and Washington County, you guys are the 2 longest standing, strong reputational, committed clubs that I would love to see elsewhere in the state continue to grow and follow your lead. So kudos to all of you and the efforts to do that. Lisa, you do a fantastic job here in Washington County as the county chair. Very much appreciate you. It's really nice to keep in mind, as a chair of the party for the state, you are trying to advance and represent the entire state. But a big part of success, in my opinion, is not just what your organization does, but all of the other elements and pieces of that organization. And in Utah, we have 29 county parties. So having each of these counties be vibrant and successful and grow and advance the cause of liberty and freedom, I find to be incredibly important. And it's very nice when you have folks that bring their talents and their expertise. And, you know, these are very big paying jobs that we have as county and state party chair. There's a lot of zeros in our paycheck. There's no other number in that paycheck, but very much appreciate Lisa's countless hours here on all of our behalf. Want to jump into a couple of things. I want to set the stage first with a kind of a comparison. So think through like what it means to be a Republican. What does it mean to be a conservative? What does it mean to be a patriot, or whatever label you want to put on yourself? Because if we went around, I'm guessing all of you would define your conservatism or define what it means to be a Republican maybe a little bit different. You know, you might be a constitutional conservative, or you might be a fiscal conservative, or a social conservative, and whatever other label that you want to put to it. So I want us to think for ourselves, what motivates you? Why do you believe in the principles and values that come with our party? And more importantly, really it's an expression of what our country stands for. As a side note, I mean, keep in mind, I'm not a Republican because that's the goal. I don't care about being a Republican. It's nice to be associated with good people and everything else, and a party can give you that opportunity, but really it's the values and the principles that we believe in that are found within the Republican Party that motivates me. So, and I would say even beyond that, yeah, I'm grateful to be an American. I'm very proud to be an American, but ultimately, again, it's the principles, it's the freedom, it's the liberty that I feel comes from on high, and is the greatest expression of what our Maker wants for his children, is found within the principles of a free market and in the principles, I don't know if I broke something, but principles of a free market and the principles of a country that's founded on freedom and liberty. So again, it comes from God. We have it expressed in our country. And then further, I think you have it expressed within the Republican Party. So with that in mind, I want to compare two categories, or two kind of stories. So one, on the one hand, you have a young boy that grows up and has all of the opportunities in the world, right? He has a family that loves him and supports him, a family that is there to help him through tough times and easy times, but is just there in a traditional sense. The family's been here in this country for a long time. I mean, 10 generations, 12 generations, all the way back up to the Mayflower, right? You've got all of those experiences, goes on to college, is able to get married, raise a family, grows up here in Utah, all of those opportunities that are given to that individual. On the other hand, you have somebody who, you know, suffers through the challenges of parents being divorced, and challenges of poverty, and challenges of being a first-generation American, and having to figure out how to get through college and to pay for college, and working a full-time job and a part-time job to do that. So you have these two different stories. And I would ask the question, for whom is the principles of the Republican Party better situated to serve and to advance? And it's somewhat a rhetorical question, but you know, I think the answer we could all say is both. The principles of the Republican Party are there to, and frankly, the freedoms of this country are there to advance and assist and support both of those individuals. Now, in that example, I'll tell you, I'm actually both of those individuals. So my parents divorced. I had a very challenging family situation on the one hand, but a very supportive family situation on the other. My dad was a Canadian immigrant, so I'm a first-generation American on his side. My mom's side, she's, 10 generations back or whatever it is, as an American citizen. So you've got these two different stories, and I think the same is true for all of us. We can look at our own lives and ask ourselves, what do you want to focus on? And what are those elements of your story that are difficult? And do you lean into those? Or those elements of your story that are aspirational and courageous, where you've overcome and you've been successful and you've been there to serve and you've built other people up? And I think we all have that dichotomy, right, of the good and the bad. And there's lessons to be learned from both. And I would challenge us to pick those lessons and to figure out those things that come from the challenging moments, and those things that come from the successful moments and the exciting moments, and make sure that we're applying those long-term into how we engage as Republicans, how we engage as neighbors, as husbands, wives, family members, citizens, and everything else. And I firmly believe that sets us up to be a force multiplier for good. I also want to talk, being in a group of a lot of strong patriotic women here. Again, I mentioned my parents divorced. My dad moved back to Canada, where he was from. He's a very leftist, socialist-leaning Canadian. That's not me. I'm grateful for my Canadian heritage, but I'm a very proud Salt Lake City-born American. And my conservatism goes and runs very deep. So my dad and I, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, but I appreciate him nonetheless and a lot of good things that he taught me. But growing up, once he moved back to Canada, I'd spend some times with him in the summers, but the school year I was here in Utah. And many of those years I was being raised by a single mom. And so I had a single mom that was raising me. Her mother was one of the first professors, female professors up at Rick's College. So very strong woman. So I had this strong grandmother. Even on my dad's side, she was in World War II, served in the military as a woman for the Canadian, well, from Canada, but for the British Armed Forces. So again, strong examples in my grandmothers. I have a very opinionated, strong-willed older sister. And that girlfriend of mine that Alexis mentioned, Erin, my wife, my sweetheart, she's a firecracker and she's awesome. But there's no telling her what to do or anything else. So I have to try to keep up with her. She's a very successful, amazing woman in everything that she engages in. So I've had the benefit throughout my entire life of strong women who teach me and challenge me and encourage me on how to be the best individual that I can be. And again, the interesting thing, the world right now and culturally may try to tell, young people that if you're supporting women, then you need to go with leftist policies, or if you want to be a strong woman, then give up on traditional things. And I just, that doesn't match up with my upbringing. That doesn't match up with my life. I had way more influence from women in my life than men in my life at many points. And yet my conservatism, my commitment to country and to principle and everything else is just as strong. And so I reject any claims that happen culturally right now in this country that says that there is a gender divide and that women are not committed to the foundational founding principles of the Republican Party or this country. It's just absolutely not true in what I've seen. So I express my appreciation to all of you again, being a part of this club. I express my appreciation to my mom and to all of these strong women in my life who helped raise me to really believe and thrive in those principles that I think come from on high. Another woman that I really admire is Margaret Thatcher. And in fact, our little girl, she's awesome, isn't she? So our little girl that I do have a fear of breaking my clavicle, and she did decide that she maybe could fly and jumped off of our island in our kitchen when she was 2 and broke her clavicle. Really made me kind of sick, especially because she's so strong at trying to keep up with 3 older brothers that we didn't know she was hurt for 2 days because she didn't cry. Like, we knew kind of hurt, but we're like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm fine. And 2 days later, it's still a little bit, well, a day and a half. My wife will hate it if it goes to the full 48 hours. I think it was under 36 hours. It was the evening and it was the following day and a half later. So we took her down and sure enough, she broke her clavicle. But that little girl, loved my little daughter. My wife and I, we had a number of miscarriages between the time that she was born or her older brother was born and when she was born. And so we had a couple of names picked out, and ultimately we decided, hey, we can't miss out on some of these names. So her name is Goldie, and then Grace, because of the commitment and kind of the reliance on our Savior during that time when we really wanted to bring more children into our family and we couldn't do it. My wife just really wanted the name Grace, and I always wanted to have Margaret Thatcher. So my little Goldie, her full name is Goldie Grace Thatcher Axson. So named after Margaret Thatcher. And I want to read a quote from Margaret Thatcher, and it says this: consensus. The process of abandoning all beliefs, principles, values, and policies in search of something in which no one believes, but to which no one objects. The process of avoiding the very issues that have to be solved merely because you cannot get agreement on the way ahead. What great cause would have been fought and won under the banner, I stand for consensus. And so that poses an interesting thought. And so you've got the word consensus. There's 2 other words that oftentimes are brought up in politics. You've got collaboration and you've got compromise. So these 3 words, consensus, collaboration, and compromise. I think those are beautiful words when applied appropriately. And where I think that those words need to be applied appropriately are in the advancement of strategy, in the advancement of solving problems, in the advancement of good public policy. We can certainly have compromise. We can certainly build consensus, and we certainly should be collaborating. Where I think Prime Minister Thatcher was talking on her concern with the word consensus is in the application of applying those three words, consensus, compromise, and collaboration, to principles. If you are going to compromise on your principles in order to just have an easy step forward, or if you're going to try to build consensus, thereby kind of watering down your principles and bringing in some principles that maybe are so foreign to your core beliefs that you don't end up really recognizing that final product. Or if you want to collaborate with somebody who absolutely hates your way of living and your views and your morals, you're not going to end up with a good product. And I would say that here in this country, we have suffered over the last 50, 60 years by a lot of consensus, compromise, and collaboration happening in public policy in Washington, D.C., and on spending, for example, that has put us into a very difficult situation. So again, let's compromise, let's build consensus, let's collaborate on the how to move forward. But on the principles and the core of what we believe, we should be locksteady and firm and confident in standing for what we believe. And in so doing, that's how we can be that missionary, politically speaking. We can invite people to the cause. Who wants to rally to a banner, again, of, hey, we're going to compromise with something we dislike? No, instead you put up that banner of what you believe and people will rally to that. I believe that leadership should be underneath a flag of principle rather than following the windsock to see where the wind is blowing. And we have way too much of the windsocks being put up flagpoles, politically speaking, here in this country, and sometimes even in this state, that I would encourage all of us to lovingly encourage those elected officials to behave a little bit differently. Because when we vote for them, I would imagine you would agree with my statement that when we vote for them, we expect leadership, boldness, and courage, not just a windsock to go up where they look up and decide, okay, this is what I believe today, because that's the direction the wind is blowing. If we move that direction, I think that Utah will continue to be what we need it to be. Utah really is a state that has the opportunity to solve a lot of complex issues for our country and to be an example for the rest of the country. We've done that in spades. I'll tell you, for the size of state we are, we have impacted this country in a tremendous way that I'm eternally grateful for. But we can learn from the past and be grateful for what we've done in the past, but we always have to be looking to prepare for a future that we can be proud of. So I don't want to rest on the laurels of what we've already accomplished. I hope to see Utah continue to be an example. That's part of why I decided to run for party chair, why I've committed as much time and energy and effort to this cause, why I'm willing to take the arrows, sometimes well-deserved, other times, and maybe all too often, arrows that come from people who didn't even bother to stop and maybe analyze the situation or ask a question and figure out what's going on. There's been a lot of four-letter words thrown my way, and I always try to respond in kind of a friendly way.
Good.
And I received an interesting email, 2 days ago, and a lot of colorful language. And sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm just going to let that one go. I decided, you know what? I'm going to respond to this one. And so I think I responded something like, well, that's a passionate way to enter 2025. I hope you have a wonderful 2025 that brings a lot of happiness and success. I sent it off, and maybe it does nothing, but it's like, okay, well, at least they know I respond to my emails and I listened and I took their advice, or at least I heard their advice. I'm certainly not going to do what they told me to do in that email. But what I will say too, there's been, and I'll share, I don't want to go too long. Tell me the time, because I don't want to. Okay, and then I'll take questions. I'll share a couple of kind of interesting experiences that I've had both over the last 18 months, and then I worked for Senator Lee for 13 years. A lot of really cool experiences through that time where I got to see the very best of Utahns, and especially the best of where Utahns and our elected officials and citizens match up with the principles of freedom that we believe in this country and match up with the principles that we have here in the Republican Party. One of those was at a little evening meeting in Sanpete County where it's called the landfill meeting. They have a landfill cooperative. They have to meet every month, all the member cities of this landfill under federal law. And they've turned it into like, hey, all the elected officials come together and we talk about issues. So as a staffer for a United States Senator, it was a fantastic meeting. I could go to one meeting a month and I would hit on every issues for an entire county. So the county commissioners were standing up and they were talking about the tax increase that they had levied. And it was the first tax increase that they had done in, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, quite a while. And I saw one of the county commissioners who was talking about it. He had served the longest, and his name's Scott Bartholomew, a very humble, wonderful, decent human being. And he started to cry, talking about raising taxes. And the average family in Sanpete County, the tax increase was going to be about $200. Now, none of us like to see $200 go to taxes that you weren't planning on. But for me, $200 over the course of the year, I can figure out how to make that work. I can budget that, and you know, it's just the cost of what we are doing. But I saw in this elected official a recognition that he knew some of his citizens, some of his constituents. That $200 was the decision on whether or not they could buy new shoes for their kids that year, or whether or not they could make as, I don't know, healthy of a purchase in their food and grocery bill over the course of that year. And I appreciated somebody who recognized the severity of the decisions that he was bringing to bear. One other story I'll share was late one evening, and I don't want to get into too much detail, just out of respect for this individual, but it was right at the start of COVID. So the world had shut down. And there was a father who called me, and he got my number. So serving as Senator Lee's state director, he tracked down my phone number, called me. It was about, I don't know, midnight. And he said, I don't know what to do, but I need to get my daughter home. And she was living outside of the country. And something horrible had happened to her. And it was that moment where just father to father, I knew I needed to do something. So it was midnight. Senator Lee was in DC. I was based in Utah. So I called Senator Lee and he answered. And I think we had it figured out by about 3 a.m. And so then the following morning, he got on the phone with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And we were able to coordinate a military transport for this American citizen to get out of the country that was closed to get home to their family. And it was one of those times where over the course of that experience, took about 2-3 days to get her home. Countless prayers. And again, it was a father that I've never met. We've talked on the phone a number of times during that moment. It was special to see that sometimes the force and strength and power of government and elected officials can actually be tools in the toolbox of our Heavenly Father. And to be a part of that process in helping that dad get back to his daughter that he desperately needed to get her home in what was probably and hopefully the worst experience of her life, and nothing ever again happens to her that would come close. It was a privilege to be a part of that. I'll tell you one last one and then we can open it up to questions. And this was just a month and a half, 2 months ago. I made a priority when I ran for party chair that Utah would be a force for good, that we would do what we could to make sure that we are advancing the cause, that we are building momentum in the party, that we are strengthening the party here in Utah, but that we are also trying to help our neighbors. And so I prioritized raising enough money to go and influence and engage in Nevada and Arizona on behalf of Republican candidates. We have some folks here in this room that ended up coming along with me. And we were able to raise and deploy over $100,000 in resources to Arizona and Nevada, engaging with Republican voters. A lot of them are folks with Utah ties, whether it's their faith or family connection, or they attended school here. But we were able to go and send down multiple waves of groups, a couple of big trips, one big trip to Arizona, one big trip to Nevada, and then a couple of smaller groups, and then text messaging and phone banking and things to these states to help President Trump. We went to Arizona and I was down there. I took my two oldest boys and we were knocking doors, and it was a very cool experience. A 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, they started knocking doors with me. By day 2, they were knocking doors together on the other side of the street. So you guys hit those 3 houses, I'll hit these 3 houses. I could kind of keep tabs on them. And at the end, they're like, hey, is this what a mission is like? And so it was very fun. And I'm like, yes, this is perfect mission prep. So sometimes you'll have the door slammed in your face for Trump, and sometimes you'll have the door slammed in your face for Jesus, but both are good efforts. So loved having that experience with them. And then at the end, we were on our way back, and President Trump decided to do a rally in Prescott, Arizona. And he asked for me to come up and participate in this. So there was the rally, but then he had this small little roundtable listening session with a number of LDS individuals. And so I was one of 2 LDS chairmen in the Republican Party across the country. So he asked me to come. So I had this opportunity to sit down and meet with President Trump with a handful of others. And he took about 3 or 4 minutes just with me one-on-one, talking about my faith and talking about what I believe and talking about a large number of Utah voters and what connects with us and where he stands. And it was just an amazing experience to be there trying to fight for and advocate for somebody that I wanted to see be elected. And certainly I knew it was the best path forward for our country, but then to see him individually on a personal level express some of his faith and what motivates him and take a sincere interest in my faith. It was just a privilege of an experience. Right after that, I was supposed to get a photo with my 2 sons and the president, and I went the wrong direction. So then I was behind the Secret Service, couldn't get there. I'm like, well, I hope my boys can still do it. And I asked one of the guys, like, yep, we still got them in. Then I was kind of worried. I'm like, what did they say to the president? So I get back to my seat. I'm like, hey, Henry, Oliver, what did you guys say? And they're like, I think we did good. I said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. President. I'm like, that's perfect. Oliver, what did you say? And he said something like, you're going to win this, and gave him the peace sign. Okay. And Oliver said, at first I was going to give him a thumbs up, but I thought that's his trademark move, so I didn't feel like I could do it. So that's why I did the peace sign. So sure enough, we get the photo back, and there's Oliver doing the peace sign. So it was perfect. But I'll just summarize everything and end with this, that I give the time that I give, and I give passionately, committed to what I believe in, the same way all of you do, because we know that if you sit on the sidelines, you lose a lot of the right to complain down the road. And the heartache that comes of seeing what this country becomes and what this state becomes and what our kids and grandkids have to live under is not something that I want to do. The challenges that we see ahead, I'm fine tackling those challenges with my kids, knowing that I did everything I could beforehand to avoid them, and that I'm committed to continue to do everything that I can to build the future that they deserve. I'm confident that's probably what motivates all of you, and to that, again, I'll express my gratitude, and I'll open it up to any questions.
I love that you shared about your kids, because my 4-year-old prayed in church the other day and he started to say, please bless that Biden, and I had to cut him off because I don't know what he was going to say. So I asked him later, and he said he was going to say, please bless that Biden gets fired. But you never know what the children are going to say.
That's perfect. My now while we're on kids, we're just gonna go with this here. My one of my sons got a cute little red, white, and blue when he was getting ordained to the priesthood. He had this great tie, and somebody complimented his tie, and then my middle child was like, well, check out these socks, and pulls it up, and it's Trump 2024. Okay, here we go. Doing a good job raising these boys. All right, so it says, of the things in your control, what is the most important to accomplish to save caucus, convention, all of that?
Excellent question. So I'm sure you're all familiar with caucus and convention, and if you're not, ask a neighbor. We'll get you involved in attending caucus and running to be a candidate for county or state delegate. I'm a big proponent and believer in the convention process. I love the convention process. I love and believe that delegates are not only a nice expression of our constitutional republic, but the delegate process does a meaningful engagement and vetting that serves the rest of their community beautifully. So I have always been very public in my support for the caucus. I wish that we did not have right now the state law exists in such a way where there's the convention path or the signature path. I recognize that candidates have every right to pursue either one currently under state law. Again, my belief is that the convention path is not only adequate, but it's a superior process. It's a superior path to good governance, to good community, and to building kind of buy-in from everybody so that an elected official not only earns votes that are important, but they also earn the respect and the confidence and the trust of individuals that they've learned from. Because when I go in and I cast a vote in a ballot box, that elected official sure earned my vote, or candidate, they earned my vote, but they didn't get an opportunity to learn from me. When they're having conversations with delegates, they're learning issues. They're learning about what matters to that community and to that precinct and to this neighborhood. I think that is an invaluable opportunity to make them better candidates. And should they prevail and be elected, it makes them better elected officials. So I certainly continue to hope and prioritize working with the legislature to advance a return to that process. One of the ways that I have within my control, as long as I'm state party chair, is to try to affect that public policy, get a change to state law, but also what can we do to build the relevance of the party to make sure that the party path is so attractive that elected officials and candidates want to go down that path and want to engage in that path. And I think that there's things that we've been doing well, and there's certainly some places that we still have a lot of room to grow. Caucus is a lot harder to execute right now than it was 10 years ago for a couple of reasons. Political apathy and political contention and anger exists at a level today that it did not exist 10 years ago. Differently. There's always been contention and things, but right now you have these like keyboard warriors that think that they can say whatever vile thing that they want to say. Well, that doesn't feed good discourse. You also have the challenge of our population growth continues to grow. It's harder to have a vibrant caucus process. So we have to, as a party, continue to learn and to grow and to adapt and to figure out the best way within our control to make that caucus process as encouraging and attractive as possible. So I'm committed to that.
Perfect. To go along with that, I know you've done a lot behind the scenes, like that maybe the whole party doesn't know about or whatever. Is there anything else you can expand on as far as like legal battles you fought or like getting more data of registered voters so we can market to them? Or I don't know, you had to piggyback, is that?
Yes, and to go along with it too. And I was very curious about like looking at what was before SB 54, which is what we've referenced here. What was caucus like? So we asked AI last night, and it was saying like in 2012, we had 10 to 15% of Republicans showing up to their caucus meetings, and what this year it was only 9 to 10%. We've had probably a pretty significant reduction there that has harmed the party from SB 54. So would love to get thoughts on that too.
Yes, so I'll start with that one and then I'll go back to some of the things that maybe broadly are not as well known of what we've been doing to advance this. We probably were close to 11% or so, 12% of attendance at our caucus. The 9.5% or so that you're referencing, that was who participated on the presidential preference poll, but there was also a delta of individuals who came and participated in caucus but did not vote in the presidential preference poll. So that took us up again to 11 or so percent, 12%. I don't think we quite hit 12%, but we were north of 11%. So it was pretty consistent. I actually think it's pretty impressive what we were able to do with those numbers because like you said, it's fairly close to what it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago, but there's two differences. We've had a lot of population growth and you've had a lot of move-ins who never experienced a pre-SB 54 caucus convention process. So they don't necessarily through their own experience appreciate the value that it was beforehand. Or maybe they've just moved in over the last 2 years and it's their first caucus. So we were able to capture still, even with our population increase, we've kept kind of that representation space. Also keep in mind COVID, we missed out on a caucus. So people kind of got out of the habit in 2020. 2022, we did another caucus, but certainly this year was a bigger caucus because you've got a presidential election and things. Also keep in mind the biggest detriment, or not detriment, but maybe damper on the turnout was by the time it came to Super Tuesday, there wasn't a competition really in the presidential race. It was the last little moment of Nikki Haley to kind of express her candidacy, but it was kind of done at that point. So that definitely dissuaded some folks from turning out. But again, I'm a big believer, let's make it as attractive and exciting as possible. We need to figure out how to accommodate more people. It's up to the counties. Here in Washington County, you guys ran a really good operation. Most of the challenging locations that we had were in Salt Lake County, a couple in Utah County, a couple in Davis, a couple in Weber. So it was big population centers. So it's a lot harder when you have massive amounts of precincts trying to figure out the venue location. So we just have to figure that one out. As for maybe some things that people don't know, I think a big one, especially for those of you that are engaged in the caucus process and maybe as state delegates, there's 4,000 roughly 4,000 state delegates across all 29 counties. And it's been amazing to hear the number of delegates that assume that the party has certain authority that we do not have. And I'm a big believer that nobody wants a tyrant. Nobody wants somebody taking authority that they don't have. And unlike the left, I'm not one that believes that the ends justify the means, that you have to do it the right way. You can't cut corners. You can't ignore the law just because you don't like the law. And what most people have never done is they've never read SB 54. What's included in that language in the law, it specifically says that the state parties, or the parties, because this applies to counties as well, that the parties have to abide by and respect the results of the primary election, regardless of the path to which the candidate qualified for that primary. So I have some state delegates saying, well, why did you not, after the primary, continue to advance and advocate for our convention winners? I'm not allowed to by state law. Like, I'm not going to be one who goes and ignores the law just because I don't like the law. You work to change the law. You work to push back as in every avenue that you can, but you have to abide by the rule of law. That's one of the ways that I think the Republican Party and the modern Democrat Party are very different. They sometimes are okay with burning down cities and ignoring the law. That's never going to be what I think is okay. So that's a piece that I think behind the scenes, I wish more delegates realized and understood, so that they would see. Prior to the primary, we were very supportive of our convention winners. And after the primary, we were committed to our Republican candidates and our Republican nominees. And some of that is dictated to us by state law. And some people would ask, well, why didn't you sue? Well, the party already sued on this point and they lost that lawsuit. And so the standing that the party has does not exist to go and to challenge that in the same way. Now, other people may have standing, other candidates are harmed or aggrieved parties, but like parties, not political parties, but members of the lawsuit, individuals. And some of those individuals who we all know are doing that, and they have every right to pursue that. But the party is in a different situation. I'm also a big believer that, yeah, we can go and blow things up. My style is never going to be to throw people under the bus. My style is never going to be to blow things up to see what comes next and to see if we can build it back better. I'm a firm believer that you need to fix what you have. And I would much rather remove bad laws equivalent to like removing a tumor rather than just amputating the arm. So that's kind of the approach that I try to take. I will say one other piece on that. So lawsuits and things, there are things that we can do. I can't really get into some of the details publicly on this, but we are always advancing the cause of the party. And there are some things that we are engaging in, and we have far more flexibility outside of an election cycle. Because in an election cycle, if we're engaging in stuff, people could appropriately and accurately say that you are interfering with the election. And I don't want to do that. I'm not allowed to do that under our party rules and bylaws, but I also think it's inherently inappropriate. So during an election, you kind of need to leave it up to the delegates and then up to the Republican voters and then up to the full voters during the general election. But outside of that, we have some opportunities to do. There's a number of laws that we're engaging on changing with the legislature. There's some legal action that we are pursuing to try to make sure that we are always protecting the Republican Party's rights. But again, I think there's more that we can do collaboratively without compromising those principles.
Okay, thank you. I wanted you to kind of expound because you just mentioned it briefly, but I don't think that a lot of people know that you spent a lot of time advancing conservative legislation, and I've seen you sitting in committee hearings at the Capitol for particular bills. Are there bills that you're looking forward to helping advance, bills that you loved helping advance in the past? Could you give us some information on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things that we've been doing thus far is there's been a lot of efforts by a small group of people to really come and undermine the party. So making sure that no fight is left without us there on the battlefield, so to speak. So anytime that there was an action being taken by a legislator that would be detrimental to the Republican Party, I would be there, others would be there. I have spent a lot of time with our legislators. Luckily, I knew a lot of them from spending 13 years working for Senator Lee. I've used that to the advantage of the party to make sure that we're trying to find an appropriate path forward. This next legislative session, there is a whole host of election-oriented bills and data-oriented and transparency-oriented bills that we will be focusing on. Keep in mind a lot of contention that happened within this party over the last handful of months were all built around the anonymity of some of our voters and their signatures. And the question about it, and for example, the party can't get access to some of that information, candidates couldn't get access to some of that information. And so sometimes people think that there's like some conspiracy out there. Really, if you nailed it down to like one core issue, the core issue that is that a bill was passed 8 years ago or so that had really good intentions of protecting the privacy of Utahns. An unintended consequence of that is it allowed individuals to create a private withheld status of their voter record. And the way the law is currently written, it has to be applied in such a way that some of that transparency that we absolutely deserve and should have has not been forthcoming. So that law has to change. That, I would say, second only to getting back to a pre-SB 54 state election law process. That's the most important piece for me, because right now, between 35 and 40%, depending on where you are in the state, of the Republican Party membership, I'm not allowed to know who they are. So I've got 950 some odd thousand Republicans. It's the largest group in Utah aside from the LDS Church. So we've got a very big organization. But 40% of them, I have a number saying that it's a person, but I don't know who they are. And then it's interesting, how can you expect an organization to fully engage with their membership if they're not allowed to know who some of their members are? How can you then transparently invite people to caucus and make sure that when they sign a signature ballot that we can verify all of that? You can't, so that has to be changed. So that will be a big priority this legislative session, is to get that one changed.
Okay, there's a couple that are similar, so I'm going to try and combine them.
And real quick, Haley, if I can add one other thing. I mentioned that SB 54 was written in such a way to oblige the party to look at and to follow the results. I would also point out, because sometimes I'll hear from delegates saying, oh, well, ignore state law. Again, I don't think you can ignore state law, but let's follow their logic for a second. And they say, ignore state law, we're a private organization, just abide by our documents. I would encourage them to look at the first two paragraphs of our party constitution that says that the Utah Republican Party will abide by Utah state election law. So, like, even if we're just following that logic, my hands are still tied to abide by state election law.
Thank you. So a couple people asked you mentioned about like the windsock theory. So what are your strategies to hold representatives or public officials to accountable, or like in our state party platform, we have the ethics and standards of public officials. Do you monitor that? What are your thoughts, strategies that way?
Yeah, great question. I think sugar is always better than vinegar. I think carrots, really encouraging carrots, are always going to get a better reaction than a stick, especially where we are a voluntary organization. And any one of these elected officials, especially those with large campaign budgets, they can ignore us. So if you throw too much of a fit and you alienate them and chase them away, they just won't pay attention to us, and yet they'll still benefit from being perceived as a Republican and benefiting from our brand. And then they can go and do their own thing. And I think that is to our long-term detriment if we are too confrontational. So again, I think you stay committed to the principle. You don't water that down at all, but you work with kind of the process, and you find encouragement and ways to bring people along, and again, make it as enticing as possible. I want these elected officials, once they're in, to see their association with and fidelity to the Republican Party to be a massive benefit to them rather than a liability. And if all they get from us is our criticism, no wonder they're going to ignore us. I would also ask you this: if you have a neighbor that the only time you ever hear from that neighbor is when they're complaining about, I don't know, the leaves from your tree falling in their yard, that's the only time that year that they talk to you is in the fall complaining about that. How much do you want to see that person come walking up to knock at your door? Not at all, right? It's like, oh, here comes Jim. I don't want to hear from Jim again. But if Jim once a year comes and complains about the tree leaves, but in addition to that, he comes and mows your lawn a couple of times a year. In addition to that, he brings brownies with his wife once a month. In addition to that, he invites you to the barbecue. Well, when Jim comes around to complain about the leaves, you kind of laugh and you say, oh, let's get that taken care of, and you take care of the leaves. All too often right now, there's people within our party who are only going to the elected officials to complain about the leaves. And every other time that elected official is right with our policy, is doing what we would want them to do, they are radio silent. So if you want them to listen when you need to complain about the leaves, bring the brownies sometime. Show up and invite them to the barbecue. So when a person is right, when an elected official, especially a Republican, is right, let's make sure they hear from us as vocally in support of their efforts in that moment as we feel entitled to be vocal in the negative in the moments that they're not right. I would also point out on that, if you engage with folks, if you have more experiences with an individual that are positive, they're far more likely to listen. So it's not even just like welcoming you. I think they'll actually start to use their ears and listen to what you're saying and get to a heart of what's motivating you. And I think that's the best way to get elected officials accountable. That being said, me personally, like as chair, I have to just run a neutral space, right? Me personally, I gravitate usually to the most conservative candidates. I mean, heck, I worked for Senator Lee for 13 years. You understand where my political worldview is. So those tend to be the types of candidates that I gravitate towards. But I also am one that believes that with very, very few exceptions, a Republican is always better than a Democrat. Even a third party. There may be good individuals who are third parties, but right now our system of government is set up in a way that if you're a third party and you're there in DC especially, you don't have a seat at the table. So once we have our nominees, I wholeheartedly support the Republican nominee, even if it wasn't my first or second choice during the primary process.
I think we're going to do two more questions.
Perfect.
So that we can get you out of here. But I just kind of wanted a little bit of a preview nationally. What are you hearing are some of the priorities? I know you and Brad and Cam are kind of the face of Utah to the national party. So could we get an idea of where they go now that President Trump is elected? Yeah,
absolutely. So kind of coincidentally, when I was elected and went to my first RNC meeting, because like you mentioned, there's Brad Bonham, our national committeeman, Kim Coleman, our national committee woman, and then myself as the chairman. You have 3 representatives from each state or territory that are members of the RNC. So the RNC is made up of those people. It's 168 individuals. And just coincidentally, when I very first came in, 2 of the first 3 or 4 people that I got to know was a chairman from North Carolina and the RNC's treasurer, who was previously the national committee woman from Kentucky. So Casey, she's the national treasurer. And then Mike Whatley was the chairman from North Carolina. Well, he's now the chairman of the RNC once Ronna McDaniel stepped down. And so I have a very close relationship with our RNC chair. And so it's been very positive because we want to advance Utah as a solution. The other thing that I did is I pointed out two things, and I've been kind of just on repeat on this. I've said that Utah is not a battleground state today, but if we're not careful, it will be. And rather than letting Utah become a battleground state, let Utah be the forward operating base from which we retake the West and retake Arizona and Nevada and even make inroads into Colorado and New Mexico. And so I've said that, and I've continually said that. So they started to know that I was going to say that, but I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go and ask for resources and ask for them to solve this problem. I'm going to come with solutions. And I think at first they're like, oh, that's great that you're going to try to solve this, but they didn't think that I would. But then doing things like raising $100,000 to deploy to the neighboring states, it's built a lot of trust. And then Kim and Brad have done a fantastic job of just jumping in and helping me with this effort. So we're in a very good place with the party to make sure that we have the support necessary moving forward. Now, the thing that needs to happen is we need to maximize the opportunity with this administration and with President Trump. And this is where, prayers to our 6 members of our federal delegation and to Governor Cox. I would say the 6 members of our delegation and Governor Cox, those 7 individuals are the most critical to having a meaningful working relationship with President Trump that will inure to the benefit of Utah. Fortunately, the change of heart that Governor Cox had to President Trump, I've been able to be involved in some of those conversations. I find it to be incredibly sincere, and I think so does the president. He is very grateful for Governor Cox's efforts. I think Utah is in a very good place. Obviously, Senator Lee and President Trump are very close. Burgess Owens is very close with him. Celeste Malloy is getting close, even as a new member. Blake Moore in leadership is in a great place to help represent Utah. Mike Kennedy is just awesome. So him coming in, he'll be a natural, committed conservative advancing these causes for President Trump. And then Representative Curtis, it's a week into being a senator. He's doing a great job already of engaging with the president and working with him. So we're in a very good place. But matching that up of the party, the national party looking to Utah to be a solution, and the president looking to this 7 members of the delegation and our governor, we're in a very good place.
All right, we're going to end on a hard one for you, Rob. Are you ready?
Please. Nolan Ryan fastball. That's what I want to see. He's my favorite baseball player.
Oh, my husband's too, and my son's named Nolan, so there you go.
We need to talk. I kept up my baseball card collecting, and it's one of the joys. Even one of my sons said, "I want to be a dad because you just go on eBay and buy what you want." I've been collecting Nolan Ryan autographed baseball cards.
I did not know this about you.
This is a new thing, and my wife teases me about it. I put my card collecting on pause since I was 12. Yeah, last year I'm like, I want to buy a couple of these Nolan Ryan cards, and a couple turned into too many. So.
That's awesome. Well, it is a question about your future, if you're going to be running for another term as chair, or if you want to expound on that.
Yeah, no, happy to. I do believe that the chair position probably should be a 4-year position. The amount of time that was spent just getting up to speed is very difficult, and the ebb and flow cycle of party turnover is very difficult, and I think it's to the detriment of the party. But we're a 2-year cycle, so it is what it is. But I went into this 1.5 years ago with the thought that obviously I would need to make sure that first and foremost, my wife and kids are in a place that I can manage the home front and the commitment to the party. And then also professionally, like I said, there's a lot of zeros that come in your party service, but you also need to pay the bills. So those are the 3 things that I have to manage, because what I refuse to do is you don't serve in any organization if you know you can't give the adequate time and energy and focus to deliver. So that's the final piece that I just kind of need to consider. That being said, my commitment is to make sure if I run for re-election that I have a plan and a priority in place that I feel I can accomplish over the next 2 years, and that I'm in a place to deliver for our state and for our party. And then if I decide not to, or just that balance doesn't work out, run to the finish line and make sure that the baton that I pass to whoever comes next, whether that's in May or 2 years from now, I need to make sure, and I am committed to make sure that that baton is in a place where we don't lose any momentum, we don't lose any steam. When I came in, we had a few $1,000s in the bank. And since then, we've been able to acquire, actually getting back to your data question, we had a few $1,000s in the bank, and we had about, 17,000 emails. We now have 120,000 emails. We've developed a bunch of technologies and systems that we have that we can deliver. And I've been able to thus far raise over $2 million, which is about 1.2 million than has ever been raised. And the key thing on that is when you raise the money, that can't be your end goal, but it's the vehicle that you can do things with. So we leaned in, for example, the state party has never done more than provide some yard signs for caucus advertising. So that costs about $10,000, $15,000, maybe $20,000. We did that, but in addition to that, we had about $100,000 that we spent promoting caucus. The state party has never leaned in to help candidates or our convention winners up to the primary. We were able to lean in with all in about $150,000 supporting our convention winners. We've done a bunch of trainings where we've helped counties do trainings. We've gotten money down to some of the counties. We've sent them out for trainings, like some of the leadership. We've done candidate recruitment. So that's all of the things. I just bring that up, that the money, it's cool to say, yeah, we've raised over $2 million. What's really cool is what you're doing with it. That's what's special. So yeah, my commitment to answer that question, I'll make the decision very quickly on if I'm going to run, but regardless of if I'm done in a couple of months or I'm done in 2 years, that baton will be passed with strong momentum. And frankly, we all have our time of serving, and the title only matters in the responsibilities you have. I think the obligation that we have to always be engaged, that ends on death, and then you get other obligations in heaven of what you're expected to do. So I'm not going anywhere. I want our party to be strong. I want Utah to be red. I want it to continue to be deep red. And I want Utah to be the force from which Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico come back to the fold.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've got a tree we can send back, or you can eat them all on your way home.
Absolutely.
It's your,
4.5 hour
it's your
drive.
choice, but our favorite Southern Utah cookies. So from Luncheon. So thank you so much, Rob. Rob puts a lot of time for his big paycheck, as he mentioned. And I personally have seen, working on the SEC with him, I've seen the good things he's done. Like you mentioned, it's huge, the technology things we've come up to speed with, the fundraising, all of that. So of course we have a lot of work to do, but we're headed in a great direction. So thank you so much for all your efforts. And he came all the way down to St. George. So let's give him one more round of applause. And thank you for joining us today. I will just remind you, if you want to get those Lincoln Day tickets, stop out on your way out. And then our next luncheon will be February 6th. We're going to have a great economic panel here for Southern Utah, so we hope to see you next month, and we will take a motion to adjourn. Let you get on your way. Jennifer, thank you. So moved. All right. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
So, what are you going to pay for?